Karen tried to return a TV covered in stickers and rhinestones without a receipt, called 911 when I said no, then faked a fall and sued me for injuries. Turns out she'd pulled this scam on 15 stores until one caught her pouring oil on the Floo. You think you've seen it all in retail, right? You think you've dealt with the worst Karens of the world? Well, let me tell you about the day my entire life almost crumbled because of a bedazzled TV and a woman so audacious, so utterly shameless, she thought she could scam her way to a quick buck, and nearly took my job, my family's financial stability, and our peace of mind down with her. It was just another Tuesday at Best Buy, and I was holding down the electronics for it when this woman, she just burst through the doors. And I mean burst. Like a hurricane in yoga pants, dragging this thing. It looked like a TV that had survived a craft store explosion. She heaved it onto my counter with this air of absolute confidence, like she definitely had a receipt. Spoiler alert, she did not. I demand a full refund for this defective TV, she shrieked, voice sharp enough to cut glass. It stopped working after one day. Absolutely unacceptable for $1,200. I just stared at this thing, trying to wrap my brain around what I was even seeing. The screen? Oh, it had more cracks than my faith in humanity. But the back, that's where the true horror began. It was bedazzled like a middle school locker exploded on it. Hot pink stickers, unicorn decals, googly eyes glued around the power button, and rhinestones, actual rhinestones, spelling out, Karen's TV, don't touch. And get this, racing stripes, and what looked suspiciously like nail polish. I swear, my jaw was on the floor. Ma'am, I'll need your receipt, I managed to say, already knowing this conversation was about to go off the rails faster than a shopping cart with a broken wheel. She scoffed, I don't keep receipts. Look it up in your system. I asked her, when did you purchase this? Her reply, recently. Very recently, like super recently. Right, because the model number, barely visible under a wine stain, showed it was discontinued in 2019. This TV was older than some TikTok trends. Ma'am, I tried again, my patience wearing thin. This TV has been heavily modified and damaged. And you don't have a receipt. Modified, her shriek, probably registered on seismographs. This is exactly how it came. Are you calling me a liar? Behind her, a line was forming faster than Black Friday shoppers at opening. An elderly veteran was there, just wanting a simple exchange. A college kid clutched a defective router. A mom with twins, trying to handle a warranty claim. They were all watching this disaster unfold like a Netflix true crime series. I need your manager now, she demanded. I smiled. I am the manager. Her jaw dropped. Then get me your manager. I leaned in. The CEO, Bill Gates. She blinked. Bill Gates doesn't work for Best Buy, ma'am. Her face went redder than the clearance tags. That's when something just snapped in me. I'd been pulling doubles all month, practically living at the store to pay for my son's medical bills. I hadn't seen my family awake in 2 weeks. And this woman, this Karen, was trying to commit the world's most obvious return fraud. I grabbed the store microphone. Attention shoppers, I announced, my voice clear over the store's muzak. Customer attempting to return a TV with custom Bad Batch stickers and rhinestones. If anyone else bought a TV with a complimentary craft store makeover, please see me immediately. The store erupted in laughter. The elderly vet actually saluted me. How dare you? She shrieked, yanking out her phone like she was drawing a weapon. I'm calling the police. This is theft, harassment, discrimination. Please do, I said calmly, crossing my arms. They'll love the part about the googly eyes. And she actually dialed 911. Hello? I need police at Best Buy immediately. They're stealing my property. While she ranted to the dispatcher, I documented everything with my phone. Let's see, I mumbled, zooming in. One screen that looks like it went through a rock tumbler. Chewing gum holding the power cord. And is that a scratch and sniff sticker? The veteran spoke up, exasperated. Lady, I've been waiting 30 minutes. I fought in Korea. This is worse than the war. 20 minutes later, 2 cops arrived, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Officer Martinez took one look at the TV, and his mustache twitched, the universal cop sign for suppressing laughter. Ma'am, you called about a theft? He asked. Yes. They won't refund my TV. It's mine and they're stealing. Officer Williams examined the TV. Ma'am, is there a reason your TV says bad on it? Karen huffed. That's how it came. From the factory? Yes. The officers exchanged a look that screamed, we don't get paid enough for this. And these unicorn stickers? Williams asked, picking at one. Factory installed. Martinez pulled out his notepad. Ma'am, filing a false police report is a crime. Her face went from red to ghost white faster than a loading screen. False. I'm the victim here. Ma'am, Williams said slowly. Best Buy doesn't sell pre-bedazzled TVs. I know because my daughter tried to convince me they did last Christmas. The crowd was growing. Employees from other departments had mysteriously needed to check inventory in electronics. Furthermore, Martinez continued, this appears to be an attempt at return fraud. That's also illegal. Karen grabbed her TV in a panic, dropping it in the process. The back panel popped off, revealing even more stickers, including one that said, if lost, return to Karen, with her actual address. I'm leaving, she shrieked. This is harassment. You'll hear from my lawyer. Ma'am, you called us, Williams reminded her. She tried to storm out dramatically, but got tangled in the security sensors, setting off alarms while clutching her bedazzled TV like a life preserver. The automatic doors, perhaps sensing cosmic justice, chose that moment to malfunction, opening and closing repeatedly as she tried to escape. And escape, alas, she did not. She tripped. Right there, onto the floor. My stomach just dropped. Little did I know, that was the worst possible thing that could have happened to me. Because now she was injured. Meaning, technically, there was ground to sue. And before I could even process it, her phone was out, and she was dialing. Her lawyer. I watched through the glass doors as she fumbled with her phone, sprawled on the pavement. That bedazzled TV lay beside her like a fallen disco ball. 20 years in retail had taught me to recognize the exact moment when an annoying customer transformed into a genuine, life-altering problem. Martinez and Williams exchanged concerned glances before rushing outside. The automatic doors cooperated this time, sliding open smoothly as they knelt beside her. She clutched her ankle, making exaggerated whimpering sounds that carried through the glass. Several customers pressed against the windows, phones out, recording everything. My assistant manager, Rodriguez, appeared at my elbow. His face had that particular shade of pale that meant corporate involvement was imminent. The elderly veteran cleared his throat pointedly, still holding his simple exchange item. I turned to address the growing line. The college kid shifted his weight impatiently, while the mom tried to keep her twins from touching every display tablet within reach. I processed their transactions quickly, my hands moving on autopilot, while my mind raced through potential consequences. Each receipt I printed felt like another second ticking toward disaster. Through the window, I watched Karen gesture dramatically at her ankle, then point accusingly at the store. Martinez took notes while Williams examined the entrance area. The bedazzled TV sat abandoned on the concrete, rhinestones glinting in the afternoon sun. Rodriguez handled the next customer while I stepped into the back office to check the security footage. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled up the camera feeds. There it was, in crystal clear HD. Karen storming toward the exit, getting tangled in the security sensors, then tripping over her own feet as she tried to maneuver the TV through the doors. No defect in our entrance, no wet floor, no obstacle except her own momentum and that ridiculous TV. I saved the footage to 3 different locations, then emailed it to my personal account. Years of dealing with difficult customers had taught me to document everything. But this felt different. This felt like the beginning of something much worse. When I returned to the floor, the officers were back inside. Karen limped dramatically between them, leaning heavily on Williams, despite barely favoring that foot moments earlier. She'd somehow managed to retrieve her TV, which she clutched possessively. Martinez approached my counter. His expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the slightest eye roll when Karen wasn't looking. He asked for copies of any documentation regarding the attempted return. I provided everything. Photos of the TV, transaction logs showing no recent purchases matching her description, and most importantly, the security footage. Karen's lawyer must have been on speed dial because her phone conversation grew louder and more animated. She gestured wildly, nearly dropping the TV again. Words like negligence and emotional distress peppered her side of the conversation. The store had returned to its normal rhythm, but I felt the shift in atmosphere. Employees whispered in corners. Customers glanced nervously at the entrance. Rodriguez fielded a call from district management, his face growing more pinched with each passing minute. By the time the officers finished their report, the afternoon shift had arrived. I should have been relieved to clock out, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. Karen had positioned herself near the entrance, still on the phone, occasionally pointing at me through the glass. Her ankle seemed miraculously healed whenever she thought no one was watching. I gathered my things slowly, hoping she'd leave first. No such luck. She ended her call and fixed me with a stare that could have curdled milk. The officers had long since departed, their report filed. The crowd had dispersed, but Karen remained, a rhinestone-studded sentinel of impending doom. Rodriguez pulled me aside before I left. Corporate already called, he said, his voice low. They want a full incident report by morning. Your stellar record means nothing when lawyers get involved. He didn't say it, but I heard the subtext. My job might be on the line. The walk to my car felt like crossing a minefield. Karen followed at a distance, her limp mysteriously returning. She made another phone call, loud enough for me to hear phrases like pain and suffering and definitely a lawsuit. My beat-up Honda had never looked so welcoming. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the image of her face when she'd fallen. It wasn't pain or surprise, but a cold calculation, like she'd just won the lottery. 20 years of retail had shown me every scam imaginable. But this felt different. This felt personal. My phone buzzed with texts from coworkers who'd witnessed the incident. Word traveled fast in retail. Everyone knew about the bedazzled TV lady who'd called the cops on herself, but they also knew about the fall, the lawyers, the corporate involvement. Sympathy mixed with relief that it wasn't them in the crosshairs. At home, my son's medication bottles lined the kitchen counter like tiny soldiers. Each one represented overtime hours, double shifts, missed family dinners. I'd worked so hard to keep us afloat, and now one entitled customer with a craft store addiction might sink us. I started typing the incident report. Each word felt like another nail in my coffin. The facts were clear. She'd attempted return fraud, called the police herself, and fell due to her own actions. But facts rarely mattered when lawyers got involved. My savings account, already stretched thin from medical bills, couldn't handle a legal battle. My phone rang, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened with growing dread. A smooth voice identified himself as Karen's attorney. He spoke of negligence, unsafe premises, emotional distress. He mentioned my unprofessional conduct in announcing her return attempt over the store speakers. He suggested we could avoid a lengthy legal battle if Best Buy, and I personally, were willing to discuss compensation. I played the message again, then saved it. Another piece of documentation for my growing file. The incident report grew longer as I included every detail, every witness, every second of that bizarre encounter. My eyes burned from staring at the screen, but I couldn't stop. This report might be the only thing standing between me and unemployment. A text from Rodriguez. Corporate wants a meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring all documentation. My heart sank. Emergency corporate meetings never meant good news. They meant damage control, liability assessment, and usually, someone becoming a sacrificial lamb. I finally submitted the report at midnight, then lay awake staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rhinestones and unicorn stickers. I heard her shriek about Bill Gates. I watched her fall in slow motion, that calculating look flashing across her face. Morning came too soon. I dressed in my best work clothes, gathered my documentation, and drove to the store an hour early. The parking lot was empty except for Rodriguez's car and an unfamiliar sedan with a corporate parking tag. Inside, the lights felt harsher than usual. Rodriguez waited by the offices, his expression grim. Through the window, I could see two people in suits reviewing paperwork. My paperwork. My incident report. My future. Rodriguez squeezed my shoulder. He'd been a good manager, always fair, always supportive, but even he couldn't fight corporate when lawyers circled like sharks. We both knew how these meetings usually ended. The door opened. A woman in a severe blazer beckoned me inside. Her companion, a younger man with perfectly styled hair, didn't look up from his laptop. Papers covered the desk between us, printouts of security footage, copies of the police report, and what looked like a formal complaint filed by Karen's attorney. The woman introduced herself as the regional HR director. Her tone was professionally sympathetic, which somehow felt worse than outright hostility. She reviewed the incident with clinical detachment, occasionally asking for clarification. The man typed furiously, documenting every word. Then came the questions about the announcement. Why had I used the public address system? Didn't I realize that could be construed as public humiliation? Was I aware of our company policy regarding customer privacy? Each question felt like another step toward the exit door. I explained about the growing line, the frustrated customers, the sheer absurdity of the situation. But corporate speak didn't allow for absurdity. It only recognized liability and risk management. And right now, I was a risk. The meeting stretched on. They reviewed my employment history, my recent performance reviews, my sales numbers. All stellar, they admitted. But this incident had attracted negative attention. Karen's lawyer had already contacted them. Social media posts about the incident were gaining traction. Some supported me, but others painted me as a bully who'd humiliated a customer. They never said the word termination, but it hung in the air like smoke. Instead, they spoke of options and mutual agreements and best interests of all parties. Corporate euphemisms for "you're about to lose your job." The HR director slid a document across the desk. My hands shook as I picked it up. A suspension notice, effective immediately, pending investigation. 2 weeks without pay while they reviewed the incident. I signed where indicated, my signature barely legible. Rodriguez walked me to my locker. Other employees averted their eyes as we passed. Word had already spread through the store grapevine. He helped me gather my personal items in a cardboard box, the universal symbol of retail defeat. In the parking lot, I spotted Karen's car 3 spaces from mine. She sat inside, watching me carry my box of belongings. Her lips curved into a satisfied smirk as I loaded everything into my trunk. She held up her phone, clearly recording my walk of shame. At home, I spread my documentation across the kitchen table. Security footage, witness statements, police reports. Everything proved my innocence, but none of it seemed to matter. My son's medication schedule stared at me from the refrigerator. Without my income, even temporarily, we'd fall behind on everything. My phone vibrated. A notification from our neighborhood Facebook group. Someone had posted a video of me leaving Best Buy with my box. The caption read, "Local Best Buy manager fired for discriminating against injured customer." The poster's name was Catherine Robert. It took me a moment to realize it was Karen, using a slightly different name. Comments poured in beneath the post. Some neighbors I'd known for years expressed shock. Others, who didn't know me well, made harsh judgments based on the one-sided narrative. Karen had crafted her story carefully, portraying herself as a victim of corporate bullying. I started typing a response, then deleted it. Engaging would only fuel the fire. Instead, I screenshot everything and added it to my growing documentation file. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd need evidence of every move she made. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 6 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a process server, legal documents from Karen's attorney. She was pursuing a personal injury claim against both Best Buy and me individually. The paperwork claimed permanent damage to her ankle, emotional trauma, and public humiliation. I called Rodriguez on his personal cell. He couldn't talk long, but warned me that corporate was taking this seriously. They'd already received negative reviews on every platform mentioning the incident. Some were clearly fake accounts, all created within the last 24 hours. But corporate didn't care about the details. They cared about damage control. My son asked why I was home on a workday. I explained I was taking some time off, keeping my voice light. He didn't need to know that his medical bills might go unpaid, that we might lose our health insurance if this dragged on too long. I spent the morning researching Karen online. Social media profiles under various spellings of her name revealed a pattern. Photos from different stores, always with complaints. A Yelp profile full of 1-star reviews claiming discrimination, poor service, and injuries. She'd turned being a professional victim into an art form. One review caught my attention. A small electronic store across town dated 3 months ago. She'd claimed a TV fell on her foot due to negligent display setup. The owner had responded publicly, mentioning security footage that showed her knocking it over intentionally. The store had closed 2 months later. I drove to the address, finding an empty storefront. The barber shop next door was open, so I went inside. The barber, an older man named Robert, remembered the electronic store well. He told me the owner had fought back initially, but legal fees and negative publicity had drained his resources. Karen had eventually dropped the lawsuit, but the damage was done. Robert mentioned something interesting. Karen had been banned from several stores in the area. He pulled out his phone, showing me a private Facebook group for local business owners. They shared photos and warnings about problem customers. Karen's face appeared multiple times under different names. I asked if he could add me to the group. He hesitated, explaining it was only for current business owners, but he took my number, promising to pass along my situation to the group admin. Back home, I found new notifications. The neighborhood Facebook post had exploded, but now some comments defended me. The elderly veteran from the store had found the post and shared his eyewitness account. A few other customers who'd been in line also chimed in, contradicting Karen's version of events. Karen responded to each defense with accusations of lying, claiming they were my friends or family. She posted photos of her ankle wrapped in an elaborate bandage that hadn't been there when she left the store. The metadata on the photos showed they were taken that morning, not the day of the incident. My phone rang. An unknown number, but I answered. A woman introduced herself as Kathy Chun, owner of a local boutique and admin of the business owner Facebook group. Robert had told her about my situation. She invited me to coffee the next morning, saying I needed to hear what she knew about Karen. That evening, I tucked my son into bed, assuring him everything was fine. This woman was destroying everything I'd built. 20 years of perfect service records, supporting my sick child, and she was tearing it all down with fake reviews and calculated lies. The way she filmed me carrying that box out, that cold smirk while recording my lowest moment, it showed exactly what kind of person she was. After he fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table organizing my evidence. The pile grew larger each day, but I wondered if it would be enough. A notification popped up on my phone. Someone had created a change.org petition demanding my reinstatement at Best Buy. The veteran had started it, sharing the real story of what happened. Within hours, it had dozens of signatures from customers who'd witnessed the incident. But Karen wasn't idle. New one-star reviews appeared on Best Buy's page every few hours, all from accounts created that day. Each told a slightly different version of the story, but all painted me as an aggressive, discriminatory manager who'd humiliated an innocent customer. I met Kathy at a small cafe the next morning. She brought a folder thick with printouts. Other business owners had been documenting Karen's activities for over 2 years. The pattern was always the same. Attempted returns without receipts, manufactured injuries, threats of lawsuits, and social media campaigns. Kathy showed me screenshots from a previous Facebook profile Karen had used. Same woman, different name, same tactics. She'd targeted at least 15 local businesses, usually settling for small cash payments to make her go away. Those who fought back faced orchestrated harassment campaigns. One document made my blood run cold. A small family restaurant had closed after Karen claimed food poisoning. Despite health department clearance, the negative publicity had destroyed their reputation. The owner's daughter had written a detailed account of the harassment they'd endured. Fake reviews, protesters outside their door, constant phone calls. Kathy explained that the business owners had tried reporting Karen to authorities, but she always stayed just within legal bounds. Her injuries were unprovable either way, her reviews technically opinion, her protests peaceful. She knew exactly how far she could push without crossing into criminal territory. I asked why no one had exposed her publicly. Kathy laughed bitterly. Those who tried faced defamation lawsuits. Karen might drop her injury claims eventually, but she'll pursue defamation aggressively. Most small business owners couldn't afford the legal fight. As we talked, Kathy's phone buzzed. Another business owner had sent a warning. Karen was currently at a hardware store 2 blocks away, claiming a ladder had collapsed beneath her. Security footage showed her deliberately loosening the bolts before climbing it. We drove to the hardware store, finding police cars outside. Through the window, I could see Karen on the ground, clutching her back while paramedics examined her. The store owner stood nearby, his face a mask of frustration. Kathy approached the owner while I stayed back, not wanting Karen to spot me. She returned with grim news. Despite clear video evidence of sabotage, Karen was claiming the ladder was already damaged. She'd filed a report claiming the store owner had threatened her when she tried to document the dangerous condition. The pattern was brilliant in its simplicity. Create the injury, claim victimhood, then paint any resistance as discrimination or threats. Even with video evidence, she created enough doubt and paperwork to exhaust her targets. My phone rang. Rodriguez calling with bad news. Corporate had decided to make my suspension indefinite. Karen's lawyer had sent more demands now, including a settlement proposal. The number made me dizzy. $50,000 for her pain, suffering, and emotional distress. I sat in my car, watching Karen being loaded into an ambulance she clearly didn't need. The hardware store owner looked defeated already. Another business about to be destroyed by her calculated campaign. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I dozed off, I dreamed of losing everything. My job, my house, my ability to care for my son. I understood now why businesses paid her to go away. Fighting her was like wrestling smoke. My son woke up with a fever the next morning. His medication was running low, and the refill would cost $300 without insurance. I counted my savings again, calculating how long we could survive. Not long enough. I called in a favor from a friend who worked at a different Best Buy location. She couldn't help directly, but mentioned that several employees from my store had been talking. They were frustrated by corporate's response, especially those who'd witnessed the incident. An idea formed. If Karen's weapon was social media and public pressure, maybe I could use the same tools. But I had to be careful. One wrong move, and she'd have real grounds for a defamation suit. I created a simple website, The Bedazzled TV Truth. No accusations, no names except my own. Just facts. Security footage showing her fall, photos of the TV with its obvious modifications, witness statements from customers who'd been there. Everything documented, everything verifiable. Within hours of sharing the link in response to her neighborhood Facebook post, I received a cease and desist letter via email. Her lawyer claimed the website constituted harassment and defamation. I forwarded it to a friend from college who'd become a lawyer. She confirmed what I feared. Defending against even a frivolous lawsuit would cost thousands I didn't have. But something unexpected happened. The veteran who'd witnessed everything shared my website on his own social media. So did several other customers. Best Buy employees, careful not to violate company policy, shared it on their personal accounts with vague messages of support. Karen responded by escalating. New posts claimed I was stalking her, that she'd seen my car near her home. Security footage from my apartment complex proved I hadn't left all day. But her followers didn't care about proof. They shared her posts, adding their own embellishments. The hardware store owner called me. He'd seen my website and wanted to add his story. So did 3 other business owners. We agreed to meet that evening to discuss a coordinated response. My son's fever broke, but he needed rest. I arranged for my neighbor to watch him and drove to the meeting. 7 business owners gathered in the back room of Kathy's boutique. Each had a story about Karen. Each had lost money and reputation. We compared notes, finding patterns we'd missed individually. Karen always struck during busy seasons when businesses couldn't afford negative publicity. She researched her targets, learning about their vulnerabilities. The boutique owner realized Karen had asked detailed questions about store policies weeks before her incident. The restaurant owner's daughter, Kat, had been documenting everything meticulously. She'd created a timeline showing Karen's activities over 2 years. The pattern was clear. An incident every 2 to 3 months, always resulting in settlements ranging from a few hundred to several thousand. We calculated the total. Karen had likely extracted over $40,000 from local businesses, not counting the ones that had closed. And that was just what we could document. Who knew how many others had quietly paid her off? Someone suggested going to the media, but Kathy shut that down. Local news wouldn't touch it without absolute proof, and Karen would sue the station and anyone interviewed. We needed a different approach. That's when Robert mentioned something interesting. His nephew worked in insurance. Most of Karen's targets had filed claims for her incidents. Insurance companies had investigators who looked for patterns of fraud. If we could get their attention, we spent the next 3 hours compiling everything, every incident, every claim, every piece of documentation. Kat created a master spreadsheet showing dates, locations, claimed injuries, and outcomes. The pattern was undeniable when laid out systematically. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt since this started. Hope. Maybe we couldn't fight Karen in court or social media, but insurance fraud was a different matter. Companies had resources we didn't, and they definitely didn't like paying out fraudulent claims. My phone had dozens of notifications. The petition for my reinstatement had gained hundreds of signatures, but more interesting were the private messages. Employees from other stores had reached out, sharing their own encounters with Karen. One message stopped me cold. A pharmacy technician said Karen had been flagging prescriptions for pain medications from multiple doctors. She'd been doctor shopping, building a paper trail of injuries. The technician couldn't share specifics due to privacy laws, but suggested I look into public court records. I spent the rest of the night searching online court databases. Karen had a history, all right. Small claims court appearances going back 5 years. Always as a plaintiff. Personal injury lawsuits that were settled or dropped. A pattern of litigation that painted a clear picture. The next morning brought more bad news. My landlord called, concerned about complaints he'd received. Someone had reported loud parties, substance activity, and property damage at my apartment. All false, but he had to investigate. I knew who was behind it without asking. My son needed more medication. I swallowed my pride and called my parents, explaining the situation. They wired money immediately, but I heard the worry in their voices. They offered to let us move in with them, but that would mean changing my son's doctors, his school, his entire support system. Rodriguez texted me privately. Corporate was pressuring him to formally write up other employees who'd publicly supported me. He was fighting back, but his own job was now at risk. Karen's campaign was spreading like poison through everyone who'd stood by me. I met with the insurance investigator Robert's nephew had connected me with. He reviewed our documentation with professional interest. Insurance fraud is serious business, he explained. But proving intent is difficult. Karen always had just enough legitimate complaint to muddy the waters. But he took copies of everything, particularly interested in the pattern Kat had identified. He couldn't promise anything, but mentioned that insurance companies shared information about suspicious claimants. Karen might find it harder to file future claims. That afternoon, I discovered Karen had escalated again. She'd filed a restraining order request, claiming I was harassing her through my website and coordinating others to stalk her. The hearing was set for next week. I'd need a lawyer, another expense I couldn't afford. My college friend agreed to help pro bono, but warned me that restraining order hearings were tricky. Judges often erred on the side of caution, granting them even with thin evidence. If Karen got one, she could use it to further paint me as dangerous. The business owners group rallied. They couldn't contribute much financially, but they offered moral support and documentation. The hardware store owner had interesting news. Karen had suddenly dropped her injury claim after learning about the insurance investigation, but she hadn't given up. New tactics emerged. Health department complaints at restaurants owned by group members. Fire code violations reported at the boutique. Suspicious online orders that turned into chargebacks. She was systematically targeting everyone who'd supported me. My website hosting company contacted me about complaints they'd received. Karen's lawyer claimed copyright infringement for posting her image from security footage. They gave me 48 hours to remove the content or face account termination. I spent those hours backing up everything, moving the content to multiple platforms. Each time one shut down, another popped up. Other business owners created their own sites, sharing their experiences. We couldn't be silenced completely, but the effort was exhausting. The stress was affecting my son. He knew something was wrong despite my efforts to shield him. His teacher called, concerned about changes in his behavior. He told classmates his parent might go to jail, something he'd overheard from my phone calls. That night, I held him close and promised everything would be okay. But I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Karen had turned my life into a battlefield, and she had more resources and experience in this kind of warfare. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the fake review accounts had made a mistake, posting from an IP address that traced back to Karen's home. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was something. My lawyer friend said it could help establish a pattern of harassment. The restraining order hearing arrived too quickly. I dressed carefully, gathered my documentation, and tried to calm my nerves. In the courthouse hallway, I saw other business owners who'd come to support me. Their presence meant more than they knew. Karen arrived with her lawyer, limping dramatically despite security footage showing her walking normally just days before. She'd perfected the victim role, down to the carefully styled hair that looked messy and the makeup that emphasized imaginary stress lines. The courtroom felt smaller than I'd expected, with harsh fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. My lawyer friend had coached me on proper courtroom behavior, emphasizing the importance of remaining calm regardless of what Karen claimed. I arranged my documentation on the table, each folder representing another piece of evidence in this bizarre saga. Karen's lawyer opened with a dramatic presentation about my alleged harassment campaign. He painted a picture of a vindictive former manager orchestrating a conspiracy against an innocent injured woman. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, listened with the expression of someone who'd heard similar stories countless times before. When my turn came, I presented the security footage first. The judge watched Karen's fall frame by frame, noting how she tripped over her own feet while carrying the bedazzled TV. I then showed the documentation of her previous incidents at other businesses, careful to stick to verifiable facts rather than accusations. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly when I presented the timeline Kat had created. 15 businesses in 2 years, always the same pattern. Karen's lawyer objected, claiming relevance, but the judge allowed it as context for the alleged harassment. Karen took the stand next, limping noticeably despite the footage I'd just shown of her walking normally the previous day. She described feeling terrorized by my website, claiming she couldn't leave her house without fear of being photographed or followed. Her voice cracked at strategic moments, though no actual tears appeared. The business owners in the gallery shifted restlessly as Karen spun her tale. Robert's jaw clenched when she claimed the hardware store owner had physically threatened her. Kathy took notes furiously as Karen described a vast conspiracy of local businesses trying to destroy her reputation. My lawyer cross-examined carefully, asking simple questions about dates and locations. Karen's story began to unravel as she confused which injury happened at which store. She claimed her ankle injury from Best Buy had required surgery, then backtracked when asked for medical records. The judge called a recess, and I stepped outside for air. My phone showed missed calls from Rodriguez and several text messages of support from former coworkers. The petition for my reinstatement had reached over 1,000 signatures, though I doubted corporate cared about public opinion. Back in the courtroom, the judge rendered her decision. She denied the restraining order, finding no evidence of harassment or stalking. However, she warned both parties against escalating the situation further. Karen's face flushed red as the judge noted the suspicious pattern of incidents across multiple businesses. Outside the courthouse, Karen's lawyer huddled with her, their animated discussion visible from across the parking lot. The business owners gathered around me, relief evident on their faces. We'd won this round, but everyone knew Karen wouldn't stop here. That evening, my son seemed brighter, picking up on my improved mood. We made dinner together, and for a moment, life felt almost normal. Then my phone rang with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, tired of surprises. The message was from a reporter at the local paper. Someone had sent them information about Karen's history of fraudulent injury claims. They wanted my comment for a story they were investigating. I deleted the message, knowing any media involvement would only escalate things further. Over the next few days, Karen's online attacks intensified. New social media accounts popped up daily, spreading increasingly wild accusations. I was apparently running a substance ring, abusing my son, and operating an illegal gambling operation from my apartment. Each claim was more ridiculous than the last, but they still required documentation and response. My landlord called again. The false complaints had escalated to the property management company. While he believed me, corporate policies required an investigation. He apologetically scheduled an inspection of my apartment. Another disruption to our already chaotic life. The insurance investigator contacted me with interesting news. Karen's pattern had triggered alerts in their system. Multiple insurance companies were now reviewing her previous claims. While he couldn't share details, he hinted that several payouts were being reconsidered. Rodriguez risked his job to call me privately. Corporate was quietly reconsidering my suspension. The petition, combined with employee complaints about their handling of the situation, had created internal pressure. He couldn't promise anything, but suggested I might hear something soon. Karen must have sensed the tide turning. Her next move was both desperate and clever. She showed up at my son's school claiming to be a concerned citizen reporting child neglect. The principal thankfully recognized her from the news coverage of the courthouse incident and called me immediately. I raced to the school, finding police officers already there. They'd reviewed the school's security footage, which showed Karen taking photos of children during recess. When confronted, she claimed she was documenting unsafe playground conditions, but her story fell apart quickly. The officers recognized her from previous incidents. One mentioned she'd filed complaints against 3 other schools in the past year, always with vague allegations that went nowhere. They suggested I consider filing harassment charges, but I knew that would only prolong the conflict. My son was shaken by the incident, asking why a stranger was taking his picture. I struggled to explain in age-appropriate terms why some adults behaved badly. His teacher assured me they'd increase security and watch for any suspicious activity. That night, I found an envelope under my door. Inside were photos of my son at school, at the park, getting off the bus. My blood ran cold. Karen had crossed a line from harassment into something darker. I called the police immediately, adding another report to the growing file. The business owners group called an emergency meeting. Karen had targeted several more members with false complaints and staged incidents. The dry cleaner found his windows smashed after refusing her demand for compensation over a supposedly ruined dress she'd never brought in. The bakery received health department visits after Karen claimed food poisoning from a cake she'd never purchased. We pulled resources to hire a private investigator. Within days, he uncovered more of Karen's history. She'd lived in 3 different states over the past decade, leaving each after similar patterns of behavior. Court records showed restraining orders, small claims disputes, and fraud investigations trailing behind her like breadcrumbs. This woman's got more moves than a chess champion with commitment issues. The investigator also discovered Karen's financial situation. Despite extracting money from numerous businesses, she was deeply in debt. Credit card records subpoenaed in previous lawsuits showed spending sprees followed by injury claims. She'd turned litigation into a lifestyle, moving on whenever communities caught on to her schemes. Armed with this information, several business owners decided to fight back legally. They filed a joint complaint with the district attorney's office, presenting evidence of a pattern of fraud spanning years. The DA's office, initially reluctant, became interested when they saw the documented pattern across multiple jurisdictions. Karen responded by escalating further. She filed complaints with Child Protective Services, claiming she'd witnessed me neglecting my son. The social worker who visited was apologetic, explaining they had to investigate all reports. She quickly determined the allegations were baseless, but the visit still terrified my son. The breaking point came when Karen made a critical mistake. She filed an insurance claim for injuries supposedly sustained at a grocery store, unaware they'd upgraded their security system the week before. The footage showed her deliberately spilling oil on the floor, then carefully positioning herself to fall in it. The store manager, part of our business owners group, immediately shared the footage with police and the insurance investigator. This wasn't just suspicious anymore. It was clear evidence of fraud caught on camera. The insurance company pressed charges, and suddenly Karen faced real consequences. News of her arrest spread quickly through our network. She'd been charged with insurance fraud, filing false reports, and attempted theft by deception. Her lawyer, apparently unpaid for months, withdrew from representation. The house of cards she'd built was collapsing. During her bail hearing, the prosecutor presented evidence from multiple incidents. The judge, seeing the pattern across several jurisdictions, set bail high enough that Karen couldn't pay. For the first time in years, she faced accountability for her actions. The business community breathed a collective sigh of relief. Without Karen's constant attacks, we could focus on rebuilding. Several owners who'd closed their businesses began making plans to restart. The restaurant owner's daughter started a food truck, determined not to let Karen's actions define their family's future. Best Buy Corporate contacted me through Rodriguez. They'd reviewed the entire incident in light of new information about Karen's history. While they couldn't admit fault, they offered reinstatement with back pay. I negotiated for a transfer to a different location, wanting a fresh start away from the memories. My first day back felt surreal. New store, new colleagues, but the same familiar routines. Customers came and went with their normal complaints and returns, none involving bedazzled TVs or false injury claims. It was beautifully mundane. Karen's trial proceeded slowly through the system. She'd been released on bail after her family posted bond, but with strict conditions, including no contact with any victims. Multiple business owners testified about their experiences, creating an overwhelming pattern of fraudulent behavior. She eventually accepted a plea deal: 2 years probation, mandatory mental health counseling, and restitution to her victims. The amount was far less than what she'd extracted over the years, but it was something. More importantly, she was banned from filing civil lawsuits without court approval. The business owners group evolved into a proper merchant association, sharing resources and information to prevent future incidents. We created a database of problematic customers, carefully staying within legal boundaries while protecting each other from predatory behavior. My son gradually returned to his cheerful self as our lives stabilized. The medication bills were manageable again with insurance restored. We established new routines, including extra security measures that had become habit. He understood in simple terms that sometimes people do bad things, but good people work together to stop them. Karen moved away after her probation terms allowed it, her reputation in tatters. The last anyone heard, she'd relocated to another state, hopefully having learned that her schemes had consequences. The business owners remained vigilant, sharing her information with merchant associations in her new location. 6 months later, life had found its new rhythm. The bedazzled TV incident became a cautionary tale shared among retail workers, a reminder that customer service had limits. The elderly veteran still shopped at my new store, always greeting me with a salute and a joke about that day. I kept all the documentation in storage, a paper trail of one of the strangest chapters in my life. Sometimes I pulled out the photo of that ridiculous TV with its rhinestones and unicorn stickers, marveling at how something so absurd had spiraled into such chaos. The experience had changed me, making me more cautious, but also more connected to my community. The bonds formed with other business owners during our shared ordeal remained strong. We looked out for each other, understanding that predators like Karen existed but couldn't succeed when people stood together. My son and I settled into our new normal, grateful for stability and peace. The medical bills were manageable, work was steady, and no one was filing false complaints or taking suspicious photos. It was a simple life. But after everything we'd endured, simple felt like luxury. And I'm so glad Karen's empire, built on suffering and fake injuries, came crashing down because one grocery store had better cameras. That footage of her pouring oil and then falling in it sealed her fate forever.